This meeting is being recorded.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, everybody. It's Wednesday, December 14th, 2022, and welcome to our special meeting of council with a closed session. I'll call this meeting to order at 4:00 p.m. and ask council if there's any declarations of conflict of interest. Just raise your hand if you have one. Seeing none. Next is the approval of the agenda. I have a motion here moved by Councillor Downer, seconded by Councillor Deputy Mayor Conton, who's not here yet, so I'm just going to modify that to Councillor Bald. That the contents of the special meeting of council with closed session agenda for December 14, 2022 be approved. Any discussion around that? All in favor? And that's carried. Next, we have our reports under section 4.1. I have a motion moved by Councillor Meredith, seconded by Councillor Bald, that staff report CSR 2022-73, request for draft plan extension, Midland Bay Estates subdivision MD-T-001, dated December 14th, 2022 be received, and that council grants an extension of draft plan of subdivision pursuant to section 51, subsection 33 of the Planning Act for the Midland Bay Estates draft plan of subdivision, file number MDT-001, being 251, 311, and 353 Fuller Avenue for a period of 6 months to June 14th, 2023. And this follows the direction we provided staff at our last meeting. And we have Mr. Farquharson on the call to provide an update to us. I think that stems largely from an email that all or most of you would have received in advance of this. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Farquharson, and then we can have some Q&A before we call the question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so the request before council today is the report before council is for a 6-month extension to the Midland Bay Estates draft plan approval. The applicant was requesting a 3-year extension. Staff went through the draft plan conditions. We do have to be cautious on how much we do discuss, as this is current list file, and this subdivision currently does have 2 appeals before the Ontario Land Tribunal, and in particular the conditions of draft plan approval, which they've appealed. Council may have received correspondence from the applicant this week indicating that certain studies were completed and submitted to our solicitor. Staff did confirm with our solicitor that no studies have been submitted to them for staff to review. Staff are anxious to get this subdivision going. The 6-month extension is appropriate. And as council may be aware, the recent provincial changes and the push to try and get the housing supply moving is on the forefront of the province, and town planning staff are trying to do our part and ensure that these types of draft plan approvals, we're pushing to try and get them resolved and try and get the conditions cleared. So staff have provided the recommendation before council tonight. And if there is any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them. However, just like I said, be cautious that this is in litigation, so we do have to be careful on how much we do discuss in terms of settlement discussions and any other items. Thank you, Your Worship.
Sorry about it, I didn't unmute. Thank you, Mr. Farquharson. Just echo that reminder that the conversation around this and the advice we were given and ultimately decided on at our last meeting is privileged, and it was done in camera. The output of that advice is very clearly public, and that is the recommendation for the 6 months. So if there's any questions of Mr. Farquharson or anybody else, council. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. I'm not clear on whether my question is of a public nature. So how do I clarify that? Do I ask it and you tell me?
If it stems from the email, or if you're asking about the questions, about some allegations about completeness or whatnot, understanding that these issues are subject to litigation. I mean, we can certainly ask some questions, but if we're going to get any legal advice beyond staff advice, we would probably have to, we should do that in camera.
Okay, it's in regards to the correspondence we did receive and her concern about the 6 months not being feasible for what they want to accomplish. Was that reviewed by staff? And they're still recommending 6 months?
Mr. Farquharson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff did consider their request, and in terms of the time limits, the 6 months, they've indicated that their environmental impact study is complete. We are anxiously awaiting that to do that review. We can turn around that review very quickly. In the discussions with the manager of engineering for the surface and groundwater study, that study does not take too much time either. He indicated, a month or two max is what it would take to complete that study. The archaeological study, we have already signed off on that. We signed off on that quite some time ago, saying we were satisfied with that. So that condition is cleared. So the 6 month is appropriate in terms of getting those major studies done, because that environmental study is going to dictate if there's any changes that need to happen to the overall subdivision. They are currently working through their engineering studies as well, but we are anxiously waiting that EIS. So if that EIS is complete, we do await for it so that we can review it with the Severn Sound Environmental Association in order to keep the application moving forward, and then we can get it get the rest of the conditions cleared and get it to registration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farquharson. Councillor McDonald, any follow-up, or does that help clarify?
If you're confident that, if the town is confident recommending 6 months, they've been at it a lot longer than I have, so it does clarify it somewhat. Thank you.
No problem. I think it's to some degree, it's just kind of to keep the fire lit under this, to keep the pot not just simmering on the back burner. Nothing precludes, as we approach 6 months, depending on the status of the file, coming back and extending for another 6 months, or perhaps things are going along so swimmingly that a longer extension is recommended. So the only alternative to not extending this is to not extend it, in which case the file literally dies, if I got it correctly, and the whole thing has to start over from the beginning, which certainly is not our intention, because we'd love to see those homes built. Councillor East, I think I saw your hand. Were you looking to comment? Question?
Sure. So Steve, if we extended it, say, a year, how would it affect your job and the position that you would stay in? Like, does it hurt anything to extend it that far? Or what are your thoughts on, maybe having a bit of kindness and reaching out to extending it to a year?
Through your worship, I think we would have to go back to our solicitor, because there has been settlement discussions with the applicant through the OLT, which is separate from this request. So I think it's tough for me to answer that. I think we'd have to go back to our solicitor to have his legal opinion if a year is appropriate. But staff feel that 6 months is appropriate, and if they do need a further extension, then council can give a further extension in June of another 6 months, 3 years, whatever council would feel is more appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ball.
I'm just wondering if you can clarify how many times this has already been extended.
Through your worship, I'm just going to go through the staff report here. So it was given its original approval in 2004, and then in draft plan was revised so it was given an extension of 3 years in 2013, and then it was granted a further 5-year extension in 2016. And then it came back in for an extension in 2021 of 3 years. However, council approved an 18-month extension at that time. So it's come through for for quite a few extensions since its original draft plan approval in 2004.
Thank you. And would any of those changes actually have needed those extensions again? Like, was there something that we came back with that was necessary for that extension?
In the last extension, the conditions that were added were to bring it into compliance with provincial planning policy. So that required the environmental study to be done, the engineering study to be done as well. I do not believe, I'd have to look at in detail of those past reports to see if there was any conditions that were added, but there was red line revisions at the request of the applicant and town staff working together. For example, the Drummond estate wall, there was a revision, red line revision done in 2010, I believe, for that. So there's been revisions overall to the layout, and that's why that environmental study is very important, because if there is environmental features that need to be protected, that may change where the road layout goes, where the lot layouts are. So that's one reason why we do need that submitted to us to review. I do know in the correspondence from the applicant, there was indication that the town and the county are holding them up from removing trees. That's the town and the county are working together, and that permit approval is from the county. It's not from the town. So the county has their own tree removal bylaw, and in discussions with the county, we've advised them that as part of the draft plan approval, there is an EIS that is completed. So that does play into the county not issuing that tree removal permit, because like I said, the layout of the subdivision may change as a result of that EIS. So that's why we're anxiously awaiting for that to be submitted to us so that we can review it and get this thing moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, and they did say that was complete to you. That's what you just said, right?
Yeah, through your worship, they have indicated that it is complete. However, our solicitor has not received it and town staff have not received it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a quick question for you. So just part of that groundwater study that was requested that they're going to do, one of the things is that it was going to take 10 to 12 months to finish at minimum, right? So they were concerned, well, this is their position. Why would a 6-month extension be extended right now? And I think if I'm understanding it correctly, in that even though with a 6-month extension, there's no expectation that all of the outstanding issues are going to be remedied. It simply keeps the file alive for another 6 months, and they come back to us in month 5 saying, hey, look how far along we are on this, and then quite likely we're all going to be talking about this again with another extension after that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, through your worship, through my discussions with the manager of engineering, the groundwater study, it won't take very long to complete, and he's indicated it would take a couple of months, if that, to complete. The applicants indicated they need to get on the site to do drilling for that particular study. My understanding through my discussions with the manager is that drilling isn't required to complete the study that he's looking. He said eventually they will have to do some drilling, but to complete that particular type of study, they don't need to drill. So if there were to be additional time required because they haven't cleared all of the draft plan conditions, then yes, they would come back through to the municipality. And if they were looking for an additional extension, we would have further discussions with our solicitor to see where those settlement discussions are going with the 2 other appeals that they have currently at the OLT for the subdivision.
Thanks. And just further to the tree cutting, I don't know if it was this applicant or another one that had talked to me. I guess there's windows of time where you're allowed to cut trees. And then if you go outside of that window of time, you're not allowed to cut trees. And that's a county rule, right? Because Midland, we don't have a tree cutting or a canopy protection bylaw in place or any regulations around that, do we?
To your worship, that bylaw is the county, correct? There is certain windows. Sometimes it could be in relation to an environmental study that was completed. And if there's a certain habitat of a bird or a bat, and their roosting season or nesting seasons a certain time of year, then yeah, they won't let you remove the trees. So for example, there's another subdivision that the applicant's currently working with me to try and get their subdivision approvals done so that they can remove trees before March, I think it is. So probably before the leaves start coming onto the trees. And so I'm not sure if that if that time frame is specified in the county of Simcoe's tree cutting bylaw. But if there is environmental studies, typically it does accommodate, or it is included in that study that say that tree removals can't take place from this date to this date. And then we would incorporate that into the subdivision agreement.
All right, thank you. And actually, I think you're right. The one I was thinking about was that other development, not this one, but they all have the same challenges. Need to clear the land to keep moving forward. Councillor Meredith.
Thank you. One question of this EIS study that they said in their letter that we had received it, correct? But our solicitor is saying that he hasn't received it.
Through your worship, correct. They're saying that they've submitted it to our solicitor, and our solicitor has indicated that they have not received it. And they have sent correspondence back to the applicant's solicitor indicating that they have not received it. And if it is complete, to send it to us so that we can start our review process.
Right. And when was that correspondence done with the two parties? Was it just done like yesterday when we received this letter, or?
So through your worship, when we did receive the correspondence, where council received the correspondence from the applicant, we forwarded it right away to our solicitor, and he confirmed that they had not received anything, and a subsequent letter was sent to the applicant's solicitor, I think yesterday.
And okay, and as of right now, we have not received that study, correct?
Correct, as far as I'm aware, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no further questions, it seems like 6 months, 9 months, 10 months, 18 months. No matter what, there's an extension involved here, and it'll be revisited no matter what. So as it stands right now, this is recommendation for 6 months, and clearly some work to do in getting these things filed. So if there's no further discussion on this, the staff recommendation that we pre-approved at our last meeting with our direction, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Okay, so section 5 on our agenda, moving into closed session. I have a motion moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Ball, that council move into closed session, and further that this portion of the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as indicated, subsection 3.1, for the purpose of educational or training sessions. A meeting of a council or local board or of a committee of either may be closed to the public if the following conditions or both are satisfied. Are both satisfied, not or, pardon me. 1, that the meeting is held for the purpose of educating or training the members. And 2, at the meeting, no member discusses or otherwise deals with any matter in a way that materially advances the business of the town or decision making of council, local board, or committee. In this particular training session, it's a continuation of our council orientation. We had 2 days already, but they were long days, and we certainly couldn't get to our agencies, boards, and commissions. And rather than force them into 5-minute presentations, we scheduled this meeting for them to present information about what they do, where they come from, and why we are connected with them. And we are going to be learning about the Midland Public Library, Huronia Airport Commission, the SSEA, which is the Severn Sound Environmental Association, the EDCNS, which is the Economic Development Corporation of North Simcoe, and Midland Bay Landing Development Corporation. Any discussion or issues with proceeding into closed session for this education? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. And we'll stop recording at this time and head into our education. Welcome back, everybody. It was only a minute for you and feels like a lifetime for the rest of us. We're just rising out of a closed session, education session. I have a motion moved by Councillor East, seconded by Councillor McDonald. The council receive as information the introduction presentations provided by the following: Midland Public Library, the Huronia Airport Commission, the SSEA, Severn Sound Environmental Association, EDCNS, the Economic Development Corporation of North Simcoe, and the Midland Bay Landing Development Corporation. All those in favor? Any opposed? It is carried unanimously. Next, I have a motion moved by Councillor Bald, seconded by Councillor Prost, that bylaw 2022-61 being a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of this special meeting of council with closed session held December 14th, 2022, be passed and enacted. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And last but not least, moved by Councillor Ball, seconded by Councillor East, that the special meeting of council with closed session adjourn at 8:41 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, council, for your indulgence and this long special meeting and the education that was imparted upon us all. And I